We are back with Champions League action to talk about, of course. Not only that, but there's some controversy with Ben White that needs to be addressed. Are we going to find out the truth? We will have to wait and see. I mean, some news surroundings as well. There may be some differences in the audio quality, so I apologise for that from the start as I'm house sitting. So you may hear some barking in the background as well. He is behaving, though. Can see him right over there. But it's all good. I hope you're doing good and well. This is the Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back with you guys for another episode of what is our Arsenal News Show, joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for tuning in and making this a part of your morning routines. It is very much appreciated. Apologies for the slight late start today, but I was trying to set up everything in a very different place. Cameras, laptops, microphones, it's difficult when you're not in your usual office. So and I had to drive the missus to the station as well this morning, which created even more chaos and rush. So apologies about that. I'm going to try and make this a bit brighter for tomorrow's show. I know it's not the brightest on the screen at the moment, but we're working with what we've got at the moment, which is obviously very limited in terms of the infrastructure for a podcast around the in-laws' house, looking after the little one over there. But good morning, and hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. It is Friday, which means, of course, it is Champions League quarterfinal draw. I'm going to be doing a live show when the draw is taking place. So we're going to watch it, react to it together. I may get some more people on. Maybe I'll ask some of the members on to discuss it at the same time as us. And we can do some reaction to that draw as well. But good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Thank you so much for doing so. Glenn, Paul, Brad, Sweating Merlot, Matt G, Damien, Tucker Boy, Blackshine, Barry, Martin, Jose, other Martin, Matt G, Ismail, Kaiser, Barry T, Jalali, Reese, Trader, Mike, Reese, and we've got Barry as well. Thank you so much to all of you for tuning in. It means a lot, and thank you so much for doing so. Please do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. We're going to jump right into today's stories, and we kick off with, as I mentioned, that Champions League draw, which takes place at 11 a.m. UK time. Whether or not the actual draw itself kicks off at that time is certainly not something we expect, considering the fact that you have all that build up, you have all the discussion, you have the introduction of the guest, the explanation of the rules. So it'll probably be about 5 o'clock in the evening by the time the draw actually takes place. But as I mentioned, from just before 11 o'clock, we'll be doing our live stream reacting to that Champions League draw of who Arsenal will be getting in the competition. So make sure that you tune in to the channel around the same time that the draw is happening. So we look forward to that. And as I say, maybe we'll invite some people onto the show as well if they're around to do so. Moving forwards, though, Champions League football is not the only thing to be discussed today. We've got to talk about transfers as well. And Alvaro Valles, the Las Palmas goalkeeper, 26-year-old keeper, playing currently in La Liga, as I mentioned, for Las Palmas, is being linked, according to Relevo, with a move to Arsenal. He is somebody I can't say I know too much about, but it doesn't surprise me that we're being linked to a Spanish player, especially considering the fact that Iñaki Quena is, of course, a Spanish speaker, and they may want to combine Rayo with another Spanish goalkeeper for that kind of chemistry and that training. Is he the right player? Well, it's difficult to know without doing more research into him as a goalkeeper. He's kept 7 clean sheets so far this season in 28 La Liga games for Las Palmas, who are not necessarily the most competitive side in the world, but he's kept 7 clean sheets, conceded 31 goals across the 28 games this campaign so far as well. But it's difficult to kind of look at those numbers and make any type of assessment. If these links do indeed improve and grow, you can be sure that we will be doing a breakdown on him and finding out plenty more about who he is as a player. So make sure you stay tuned and subscribe for that content towards the summer. Now we move into international news now, and Havertz has been called up by Germany, of course, the other forwards involved at the moment are Maximilian Bayer, Nicholas Füllkrug, Thomas Müller, and Dennis Undav, of course, who's had a fantastic season on loan from Brighton. Where Havertz will play in Julian Nagelsmann's side remains to be seen. He played at left back, you might remember, more recently, but his form for Arsenal at centre forward means that you'd think that he'd be involved in some way, shape, or form with the forward line with Germany. So keep your eyes peeled for their games in the next couple of weeks. Meanwhile, William Saliba has been called up for France. He is involved in that squad with the likes of Lucas Hernandez, Teo Hernandez, Ibrahima Konate, Jules Koundé, Benjamin Pavard, and Deo Upamecano. He really is in with a shout, I think, of breaking in to that France first team. He's certainly already broken into the Arsenal first team. But yes, he's certainly with a chance of breaking into that French first team very soon indeed. Meanwhile, in more, I suppose, positive news, Tomiyasu has not been called up by Japan. Arsenal's discussions with the Japanese Federation, I assume, have been positive in the sense that they're allowing him time to recover, allowing him time not to go away and get injured again, but actually instead be back at the Emirates, at the club, working on his fitness and hopefully being ready to take on the post-international break running between then and the end of the season. And then the England squad, which is what's caused the most controversy today. We'll talk about the elephant in the room shortly. But the positive news for Ramsdale, Rice and Saka is that they have all, of course, been called up. The England squad is as follows. Sam Johnston, Jordan Pickford and Ramsdale as the goalkeepers. Jared Braithwaite gets his first call-up. Ben Chilwell, Lewis Dunk, Joe Gomez, Ezri Konsa, Harry Maguire, John Stones and Kyle Walker are the defenders. Midfielders include Jude Bellingham, Conor Gallagher, Jordan Henderson, James Maddison and Declan Rice. Forwards include Jarrod Bowen, Phil Foden, Anthony Gordon, Harry Kane, Cole Palmer, Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka, Ivan Toney and Ollie Watkins are the choices. Goodness me, that is some bright sunlight suddenly shining through the window. And then, of course, the big news from that England squad is that Ben White has not been included. And yesterday, I'll be very honest, it was a very, very difficult discussion day surrounding Ben White. It was, I mean, the first point to talk about is obviously the bigger news from an Arsenal point of view, which is his new contract, which you can see in the picture on the screen, being signed, officially announced. Ben White has signed through until 2028 with an option to extend through to 2029. It's great news for Arsenal. It means that he's committing his best years to the club. He's now 26. He'll be 30 by the time that contract comes to a near close. And that's really good news. And I loved the announcement video. I loved the video that they produced where they got the Arsenal players to talk about Ben White, to talk about who he is as a player, to talk about the fact that he's a warrior, that he does anything he can to win, and that he's a bit of a plonker, as Ramsdale said. However, the England manager in the press conference during the announcement of the squad was asked directly about Ben White. He said, "We had a call from Edu last week to say that Ben didn't want to be considered for England's squads at this time. It's a great shame." He continued by saying he is a player that we took to the Euros, a player we took to the World Cup, and I spoke to him post-Qatar because I wanted to pick him. He is not available to us, and there is no issue between us at all. And I should also say that there is never any issue with coach Steve Holland because that has been mentioned in articles, and I don't like that. I want that door wide open. He would be in this squad, but he's not available to us, and I have to focus on who can help us. That's what Gareth Southgate said. He also talked about reticence after speaking with Ben White after the Qatar situation. Now, just before we get into the athletics exclusive exposure type thing at the end of this first section, I just want to say that at this point, I was pretty frustrated by Gareth Southgate's handling of this situation. I thought that it was completely unnecessary to effectively throw Ben White under the bus, which is certainly how I feel the situation has been handled. I think it could have been deflected. I think it could have been talked about with an element of discretion, and that the use of the words "at this time" is important. If you've been told that Ben White is not available for the England squad at this time, that is not that is not Ben White rejecting England forever. It's just not. If it says "at this time," that clue is in the name, right? Secondly, to turn around and talk about the reticence, to go into detail, and as much as that detail is, about the reticence that has been had from Ben White, again, I think provides too much. Without us hearing from Ben White himself, to talk about it in that way, knowing that we're not going to get the Ben White side of the story from him specifically, because I think I don't imagine he has any interest in talking about it, revealing it, or discussing it. Again, I just didn't agree with how Southgate handled that at all. And then, of course, later in the day, we had the article from The Athletic, from Jack Pitt-Brooke, talking about kind of everything in a bit more detail. It wasn't just Jack Pitt-Brooke, it was also Daniel Taylor from The Athletic that did this story. Some of the highlights from this, I'll quote the entire few paragraphs where it gives you a bit of the glimpse behind the scenes. Here we go. The truth is that White had found it difficult being out of the sides at the 2022 FIFA World Cup, not even necessarily the second choice for his position, and struggling to settle in the kind of environment a long way from home. There was a row with Steve Holland. I'll finish before I make comments on this. There was a row with Steve Holland, England's assistant manager, when White was on the receiving end of a verbal dressing down from Southgate's right-hand man. But White had already finding it difficult to conform to life in the vernacular of international football as a good traveller. That, in short, is exactly why Holland turned his anger on him. White flew back from Qatar to resume mid-season training with Arsenal. England's coaching staff liked to pass on detailed notes to the players about their data from training and matches, as well as tactical information about the opposition. At one meeting, Holland did not appear to think White was taking it seriously enough, and there was an angry exchange in front of the other players that created a lot of discussion within the England camp. Now, we've gone from 1 minute, Southgate saying that there is no problem with Steve Holland and that he's got an issue with the fact that Steve Holland's name has been brought up in articles. And then hours later, we received this article from The Athletic suggesting that there was a row with Steve Holland and that he was on the receiving end of a verbal dressing down from Southgate's right-hand man, as he found it difficult to conform to life in the vernacular of international football. Now, you're in your first camp. You're in your first time there. You want to help the players integrate. You want to help them assimilate into things behind the scenes. And a verbal dressing down to be made an example of in the group, rather than maybe being taken to one side and having a discussion with instead after whatever situation, to keep the harmony of the group, to keep the player on side, to, all of these things. And there's an interview, you can go back and watch it on Sky, where Ben White talks about how proud he is of being called up to the England team. This is not about England in any way, shape or form. This is about the individuals involved in this situation. And that is what Ben White has taken, clearly, from what we can glean, and this is just me speculating. But I think the biggest indication we will get is when eventually this coaching staff and this coaching group leaves the England squad. Where will Ben White be? Will Ben White be coming back into the England squad? And I sincerely hope he does, as an England fan, because I think he would start for England personally in the years to come. It's good enough. If he does come back, I think that tells you everything you need to know. And from my perspective, I think that Ben White is well within his rights to make his own decisions about whether or not he wants to be part of the England team or not. And I'll just finish by saying that I thought Gareth Southgate's words opened him up to an incredible amount of unnecessary scrutiny, an incredible amount of inevitable patriotism-based just splurges of horrific words online. Your classic Brexit, puff your chest out, roll up your sleeves and show your bulldog tattoo type English way of looking at things, which I just can't stand. If he doesn't want to play for the England national team because in his mind or his view of things, he feels as though the treatment that he received, it was just not okay, which I'm, again, just speculating on from my view. Certainly that's how I interpret it from the information that we're getting. That's his choice. As an England fan, does it frustrate me? Does it upset me that he's not in the England squad? Yes, only because I think he's a quality player that would add to us. Doesn't frustrate me because it's his decision. It's his choice. I respect it. Ben White, as we know as Arsenal fans, is a player that will die for this team. If you fight for him, he will fight for you. If you show him everything that you need to show him to get him on side, as Arteta has done, he will do everything within his power to be the best player for you. I think there is an element of responsibility on both sides to be as accommodating to the different individuals, the different personalities, and the different people within those groups. I don't particularly like words like turning his back on England. I think that makes an assumption. I think that takes away some of the human element of things with this Ben White situation. And I just think that this has been handled horrifically. Ben White has done the right thing by staying silent, by not talking about it, by if he's asked about it, I'm assuming he'd probably deflect from it. Maybe not now, I don't know. Maybe he'd want to respond. But there was no discretion. And arguably, in some ways, no respect shown, in my view, to Ben White in this situation. And I think it has made the situation worse. And that is not the job of a manager. A manager is there to protect his players, protect his team, protect his staff as well, but done so in the way in which I think it can provide the most discretion to your players. And I don't think he did that. I really don't. I really, really don't. Right, that's going to bring us to the end of part one. So we'll go to part two and your questions right after this. Now, of course, you can get all the protection that you need as well, of course, online with NordVPN, which brings you the fantastic service of protecting your safety and security with some fantastic abilities to not only give you that geolocation switching superpower, but to keep those pesky trackers away, of course, as well, on your laptop, on your mobile, or indeed your tablet as well. And I recommend that you get involved with it. Link down in the description. Gooner is the code, nordvpn.com/Gooner. And not only that, you can get a 1 or 2 year plan with a significant discount and 4 months thrown in free, I should say, if indeed you would like to get that extra bit of bonus on top of that too. The link, as I say, is down in the description. And not only that, but you can get involved in the latest Football Prizes competition too. The signed William Saliba shirt is available on the Football Prizes website. You can go to the link in the description as well there to get involved in the latest competition. Make sure you get in there soon because tickets are selling fast. Lots of instant win prizes also, so get involved as soon as you can. Right, part two, your questions. Shall we jump into the chat box? I hope that we do. Derek says, Benny is not given the credit for how good a player he is. Yeah, look, I think that Ben White, for some people, will just never, ever get the credit that he deserves. Never, ever, ever get the credit for what he deserves. And for that, I quite frankly, I don't even want to give it energy. Because we know how good he is. You know how good he is. As Arsenal fans, we are so happy with the work that he provides this Arsenal team. And we respect him and love him for that. And so that, for me, is really, really important. Clive says, well said, Tom. I also think Ben White has a sort of character that means he wouldn't run into the media to rubbish Southgate and Holland either. I do tend to agree. I'd be surprised if he did, to be honest. I think he'd probably just want to deflect away from it and just crack on with his Arsenal job. But maybe after hearing these words, maybe he will say something on it. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Pedro says, I can imagine Ben not wanting to get involved in all of the team's bonding and evening activities. He'd want to just go home and chill when it's been said that he's not a good traveller and finds it all a bit boring. And this is the thing, like, people are different. And you have to incorporate that difference of personality, of how you engage with other people. Some people are more insular, some people are more extroverted, some people just want to chill, some people just want to go and enjoy each other's company. If he's struggling, it shouldn't be an angry dressing down. If there's a discipline issue, take them to one side, talk to them, don't dress them down in front of the squad, don't make examples of them. I just think that's the wrong way to handle it. I really, really do. Jane says, hey, Tom, long-time audio listener, the first time catching it live. Hello from Seattle, Washington, USA. Who do you think is Arsenal's best player right now? I think, Jaden, that Arsenal's best player right now is potentially Ben White. In 2024, he's been one of our best players. Bukayo Saka, Kai Havertz, also up there, of course, as well. Declan Rice, too. But in 2024, Ben White has been, I think, our strongest player. It's been absolutely fantastic. Marcus says a big shout out to the Arsenal women's team taking on Chelsea in a massive game tonight. Of course, we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Very much looking forward to that. Paul says, this is why I support Arsenal, but couldn't care less about England. Southgate is a terrible manager who got lucky with the players at his disposal. But despite that, he's tactically naive. I'm very much a big critic of Southgate. I think ultimately England have underachieved during his tenure. And I think that we should have done a lot better under his tenure as well. Mad Ramo says, is Ben an introvert? It seems like he is. And yeah, he might potentially be. I mean, he might not be when he's around his mates, when he's behind the scenes. We don't know. And we can't make assumptions on people's character just because, you know, he has or has not chosen to represent England. But still, whether he is an introvert or not, you've got to try and, as a manager, it's your job to adapt to different personalities, you know, different characters. And I don't think that's happened here at all. Derek says, Thomas Partey being called up to the Ghana squad. I'm surprised he didn't play against Porto. I don't know, actually. I've not seen that yet. I'd be surprised if he wasn't, to be fair, because now he's been back a little while and he's playing games. So he might potentially be, but I haven't seen anything about that yet. Stephen says, have we seen the last of the nonsensical experiment of playing Partey at right back and dropping Gabriel? What was that about? The Partey bit I don't mind, but dropping Gabriel to accommodate that is mad. I don't know, Stephen, actually. I don't know if we've seen the last of it at all. I really, really don't. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But the statistics were actually very good when we were using that system. Partey's stats on his average from last season were up. Arsenal's own statistics from that last season average were up. So I know that a lot of people didn't like it, but actually it really did. Make me think. So there you go. Front Yard says, Tom, I don't know if it's just me. I respect people who want to play for their country, but even if Ben didn't want to, I wouldn't think less of him. Everyone has their views of this country. Of course, that's what I mean. That's why I cannot get my head around. I can get my head around it because I know, sadly, there are people out there that I just take patriotism way too far. And Ben White is being battered by some elements of certain aspects of the media that I really disagree with, and I think come from a really dark place. That's sadly just not okay. And if you want to represent your country, amazing, fantastic. And if you don't, it's your choice. It's your choice if you want to represent England. And it may be that he does want to represent England, but he feels that, and again, I'm not speaking for him, I'm speculating. This is just my opinion. It may be that what's happened under this current coaching group for him is a no-go. And it goes against what he thinks is acceptable. And he's made the decision not to. And I think that will come out when this coaching group eventually moves on. And I hope it does relatively soon, because I think England deserve better. I think we need better. I think we've underachieved under this coaching group. I think that we'll then see it. If the new manager comes in and calls up Ben White, different coaching group, let's wait and see. Let's see what happens. I'm very curious to see what does happen at that point. Clive, thank you so much for joining us. Clive says it's a failure of leadership and accountability. And I think, as always with Clive, he annoyingly sums it up very succinctly and very well indeed. Michael says, good morning, Tom. Currently in the van with my apprentice, who's a Manchester United supporter, who's saying that he's loving the format of your show and wishes they had a similar show. Thanks, Michael. That's very kind, and send the thanks on to your friend as well. Really appreciate the kind words, especially from a rival as well. It's nice to get that feedback. Tizer says, well done by Arsenal to do the Ben White contract announcement on the day of the England squad was being announced to deflect some of the attention about this non-inclusion or creative move discussion about it. Yeah, I think if you don't think these two things were timed the way they were timed, maybe being a little bit naive, there's no way that they don't announce this not knowing that the England team is coming out. They know that the England announcement is coming on this day. So to announce this, and trust me, this has been kind of done for a little while. They could have chosen when they wanted to announce it, and them announcing it today was perfect. Absolutely perfect. So fair play to Arsenal. Dennis says, playing for England is not the beginning and the end of football. England wins nothing anyway. More players like Tomori need to start doing this. A joke of a head coach. Nando says, Partey will replace Jorginho in that particular starting lineup. Listen to Arteta talk about Partey and Rice. That has been the plan all along. Paul says, what's the news about Alvaro Valles? Just that there's interest from Arsenal at the moment, mate, as we discussed in the first part of the show. Go back and give that a listen for more information. Archangel says England have a golden generation at present. They would win the Euros if they had a decent manager. I think Gareth Southgate is an okay manager. I don't think he's terrible. I just don't think he's good enough in my opinion, based upon what I've seen. And, you know, we're entitled to that view of what we've seen so far. I just don't think that he's shown to be good enough. I don't think they've held him to account enough for the underachievement of this England squad. England should have won the Euros. England should have got to the final of a World Cup. England should have been more competitive in their game in the last World Cup as well. And we weren't. And we will wait and see what happens at this European Championships. I hope he surprises me. I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he wins the Euros. I'm not going to be that stubborn guy that doesn't want him to succeed just because I'm not his biggest fan. Same as I know a lot of sad Arteta critics are that way inclined. I would love England to win. I would love Southgate to prove me wrong and win the Euros. I just can't see it happening at the moment. Amira says, the way Arsenal made that announcement video with the teammates and releasing it on the same day as the announcement is the level of pettiness that I live for. I don't know if I'd describe it as petty. I think it's more supportive than petty. It's not a coincidence that it was done at that time. It's just perfect that it was done at that point. Philip says, I'm very excited about Partey and the team. Do people not remember he was one of the best players in the league last year? I look forward to seeing him reintegrate into the group and hoping that he can bring some of the quality that we had last season. Boss says, is Zubimendi still on Arsenal's list? Yes. Tizer says, if you could have one manager to manage England with this current group of players, who would you pick? Klopp, Arteta, or Pep? Pep, of course. He's the best manager of the three. So, of course, if we are to replace the England manager, I am not one of those people that thinks that the England manager has to be English. I don't agree with Jamie Carragher at all. Go and have a look at the success of the England women's team with Serena Weigmann. Do not need to have an English manager to have brilliant success. And I'd welcome a manager from anywhere else in the world of real, genuine quality. And even with my reticence as Jose Mourinho as a manager, I wouldn't mind Jose Mourinho being given an opportunity. I think that'd be amazing to see. England with Jose Mourinho, I think that'd be brilliant to see. If you do want to go down the English manager route, I think Eddie Howe is potentially an option. I think Graham Potter is potentially an option. And I think Gary O'Neill is proving to be a very, very good coach at Wolves. And I think Gary O'Neill is putting himself into the conversation of potentially being somebody who could take over that England job. So Gary O'Neill probably would be my number one pick at the moment. But I would not rule out any managers from abroad either. It does not need to be an English manager in charge of the English national team. Matt G says, Tom, I've seen that KDB suddenly has a knock and has withdrawn from the international duties of Belgium. Why can't we do the same with Saka and Rice as games are just friendlies? Well, I guess the argument would be from England is that they're not injured. And Arsenal and Manchester City and Belgium would say, De Bruyne is injured. So I guess that is your reason behind it. Dennis says, good for Arsenal for giving White all of the support he needs. Remember how England treated Righty year on year. Mitch says, Ben White is acting like a grown man, not pouring gas on the fire and making his own decisions, holding his cards close to his chest. This should be admired, the character that you would want at England as well. Aditya says, Tom, why not Sir Alex Ferguson for England? He's retired. He's not managing anymore. So, yeah, not for me. Trevor says Southgate has underachieved, but I believe he has the best record for an England manager since Alf Ramsey. He does. Doesn't mean that you can't ask for better, though, right? You know, if you think he's underachieved, I think that doesn't mean you can't. I think some critics of Arteta might try and turn that and say, well, Arteta's done the best job since Wenger, arguably, although there's only one manager in between them. But surely we should be asking for better if we can get better. But the thing is, I don't think necessarily that Arteta's underachieving at all. In fact, I think he's doing quite the opposite. So, whereas with England, Southgate's certainly underachieving at the moment. Derek says, Tom, Ben is absolutely correct. Didn't feel comfortable, so is removing himself from the situation. Dissent wants to be the blame if things go wrong. Absolutely a team player. And the bigger picture, all you need to do is listen back to that Arsenal contract announcement video. Listen to how those Arsenal players talk about Ben White. And you know what's really good is it was a really human element of it. Ramsdale added that element, calling him a bit of a plonker. And I think, you know, that might be in some ways to say he's not always perfect. You know, Ben White's not always going to be perfect. His character may sometimes rub people up the wrong way. My character certainly rubs up people the wrong way. Does that mean I'm a terrible person? No. It just means I've got my flaws. It means I've got my imperfections. Nobody's perfect. And that's why, as managers, it is your job to protect your squad, protect your staff, protect your potential squad for the future, and speak with discretion and protection in the best possible way. But also, and arguably even more importantly, is to adapt to the individuals in your group, to treat them with respect, to not dress them down in front of other players, to not undermine them. That is the job of a manager. It is to be the best potential leader, the person that earns the respect of your staff and your players and moves in the right direction. And I think Arsenal and Arteta nail that to a T. I think they nail it to an absolute T. You can be disciplined and you can make mistakes and learn from them too. And I don't think necessarily Arteta, as a manager at Arsenal, has always made the right decisions or not necessarily been the most consistent, especially at the start of his reign. I remember the Willian situation. I think maybe he was a bit too soft with the Willian thing. If you remember when he went off and he wasn't necessarily really punished, maybe he learned from that. And that's why when Aubameyang had his disciplinary issues on a consistent basis on numerous occasions, Arteta learned from maybe being a bit too soft in the past and was actually a little bit more stringent, a little bit more disciplined. And ultimately, when someone crossed the line, they had to take action. I cannot see from the information that we've got of Ben White crossing the line, and certainly not in a way that deserved him being dressed down in front of other players. I just can't see that as being the right pathway at all, whatsoever. Jarzy says, nobody's perfect. That's why I'm up at 4:30 a.m. watching you spit facts instead of working, which is why I'm up at this ungodly hour in the first place. Good to see you live, though. Thanks, Jarzy. Very much appreciate your kind words. Bless says, hey, Tom, did you see the news about the Kenyan lady who gave birth to triplets? And out of love for Arsenal, she named them after 3 of Arsenal's Gabbies. No, I didn't, Bless, but please send me that story immediately. So, has she called them all Gabby? Are they all called Gabriella? Or Gabrielle, of course, if there's boys and girls. Has she called them Magalhaes, Martinelli, and Jesus? I'd love to hear more about this story, Bless. That sounds amazing. That sounds brilliant. Dennis says Ivory Coast sacked a manager mid-AFCON and won the tournament. Why are England and the FA so afraid of making tough calls? They literally have a golden generation on their hands. Absolutely. Trevor says that we are talking about a World Cup and the European Championships in response to Archangel, but I didn't see his comment. So tricky. Farad says, Tom, did you see that De Bruyne withdrew? Yes, I did. We kind of touched upon that a second ago. Did I miss any comments? Should I scroll up and see if I missed any other ones? Aaron says, hey, Tom, sorry I'm late. What do you make of the Liverpool fan base head loss over us at the minute? It is quite funny. It's a little bit funny. A little bit funny that we're seeing so many Liverpool fans get so upset. Chelsea too, by the way. It's Chelsea and Liverpool at the moment are getting so upset with Arsenal. No matter what they do, they're being really upset. You know, it's just very, very frustrating, I think. Very frustrating for fans to not just be able to enjoy themselves. Dan said he's put it in the Discord server, I'm assuming the Kenyan story. Let me see if I can find it. Why is an interview of Mohamed Kudus playing in the background? I don't know if you saw Mohamed Kudus' goal yesterday, by the way. It was absolutely brilliant. If you haven't seen it, let me see if I can find it. The story. Where is it? Show me the story. Okay. So, I'm going to have to read a whole article live, and that's not what I want to do. I was hoping it'd be kind of like a little quick thing. A Kenyan woman has made the headlines this week for her unique choice of names for her newborn triplets. After giving birth at the Kakuma Mission Hospital in Turkana, the proud mother, Epakan Akale, decided to name her children after Arsenal's Brazilian stars, Gabriel Martinelli, Gabriel Jesus, and Gabriel Magalhaes. Amazing. I don't know. So are the names like specifically those? Is it like, are they called Gabriel Magalhaes, Gabriel Martinelli, and Gabriel Jesus is like the first names? Is that how they've been named? That sounds brilliant. So it's like it's that famous kind of viral clip. I don't know if you've seen it, where is it an Australian guy names his kids Lanesra, and his other half's like, what a beautiful name, Lanesra. And then they realise that it's Arsenal backwards, which is just amazing. Absolutely brilliant. Clive dropping in again says, well said, Tom. Southgate wants Ben to bend to him. Think how Southgate protected Henderson and Maguire, which is how you should be. Inconsistent management will lose respect in the dressing room. And Clive, as always, is absolutely spot on. Right, I'm going to end the show there. Let us know your thoughts on anything that we've discussed today in the comment section down below, and your thoughts on the Ben White situation. You know, if you've got any questions about anything that I've said during the show, I always welcome them. I'm always open to challenge, and I'm always open to responding it if you indeed are open to challenge yourselves. Of course, we discussed a number of other things yesterday in a very brief show, and we got a little bit deep, and I had a few discussions with people in the comment sections about the xenophobia that we spoke about. And I stand by those words that I spoke about yesterday. It's a shame that some people can't necessarily see what's xenophobic about saying they don't want Americans at the club, and that just being a statement by some. It is xenophobic. If you want to preface it with something else. And I also want to, in some ways, hold my hands up to Nav, who was in our comment section yesterday. The issue with YouTube sometimes, and the comment sections with YouTube, is that if you leave a comment, you typically have to lay out all of your context. Because if, like, we live in this WhatsApp world where you leave messages like one after another and you break them up, but you can't do that in a YouTube comment section because I can only highlight one comment at a time and I'm only going to read one part of your message. So there may be further context to your point further on that I miss. So if you're making quite a important point, try and put it all in one message, because it might get broken up and then misinterpreted. So I hold my hands up to Nav. You know, I certainly didn't intend to label something that wasn't initially spoken about in some ways, but as opposed to the other message that certainly was just xenophobic from somebody else in the chat. So go back and watch yesterday's show if you want to get background on that. But other than that, thank you so much for listening. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. If you're new, I'll be back at just before 11 o'clock for a live stream of the UEFA Champions League quarterfinal draw. Very excited, very much looking forward to it. And I can't wait to see who we get. Have a fantastic day. See you soon. Stay safe, stay well, happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.